Yes campaign has launched its first major advertising drive in support of the Voice to Parliament. Themed Join Us. It's an invitation to all Australians to join in the movement for a successful referendum on constitutional recognition for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The ad, which features Indigenous community leaders and advocates, will begin appearing on TV from this Friday.
Australia's constitution is 122 years old and still doesn't recognise Indigenous Australians.
We've been here for 65,000 years.
This year, Australians have a chance to fix that with a referendum to give Indigenous Australians a real say in their future.
Fair enough.
I'll second that.
To find out more, visit yes23.com.au. Join us.
Authorised by Dean Parkin, Australians for Indigenous Constitutional Recognition Limited, Sydney.
That's the ad. The Voice referendum is expected to be held sometime between October and December of this year. And joining me live now is Yes23 campaign director Dean Parkin. Dean, great to see you once again. Why this ad? Why now?
This ad because it's time to take the conversation, Laura, about the referendum on recognition through a voice back to the Australian people. We've heard a lot from the politicians and legal experts over the last couple of months. The people that have been sitting there waiting patiently to be engaged in this is the Australian people, and ultimately they'll be the ones that will determine the success of this referendum. So this is starting a very simple conversation with Australians about what this is about, and this will be the first of other ads to come between now and the referendum.
Yep, you're right. We've heard a lot from Canberra in the last couple of months, but what about Indigenous Australians? You've been getting out and about. Do they broadly support the Voice, and would they tell you if they didn't?
Oh, the mob have got no dramas telling me whatsoever what they really think about issues, and that's the beauty of the conversations that we're having in the community. You really do get to have that conversation, and it's a very different conversation on the ground. There is a lot of goodwill from people coming to this. People are ready to be engaged. There's a level of curiosity about, well, what's this all about? Maybe I've heard something, but I'm not really sure exactly what this is about. And when you talk about it and say, well, it's about recognition of Indigenous peoples as the First Peoples, and it's about giving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people a voice, a real say in our futures. It's a very different conversation to what you read in the newspapers. There's a lot of openness to it. So that's where we want to focus this campaign. That's where it needs to be focused, and this ad is definitely part of that.
Yep, certainly is. You're a bit nervous about where it's at. I know you're saying, and you just said again there, that what you're seeing on the ground is very different to what we're reading in the newspapers. We see poll after poll. They're kind of telling us all different things. But are you nervous about where this might go over the next couple of months as people do start to ask for detail, understand what it's about?
Not at all. I'm actually really excited about it. This is the opportunity that we've been looking for. We're coming now to the end of the kind of parliamentary process, the political process, to an extent about the mechanism. What starts now to the referendum is the community part, is the actual voter part, where it's not about the Prime Minister, it's not about the Leader of the Opposition, it's about the people on the ground who will step into that polling booth on voting day and make their decision, and I think they'll make the decision yes to vote for this. So this is the part that we've been looking forward to, having done that first phase, now getting out there with the communities and having the real conversations, not the kind of to and fro and the argy-bargy that people, quite frankly, are sick of. It's getting down to that community level. So this ad is definitely part of that. We're also making a lot of effort to get people involved in the campaign across the country being ready to have these conversations with everyday Australians. So we're really excited about where this is heading.
Yep, we've seen the committee stage now looking at the wording for this legislation. There's a bit of a campaign we've seen, well, not a bit of a campaign, a driven campaign from the No camp, and it's centring around this being a racist clause. It centres around really saying to people, if you don't understand it, don't vote for it. Are you seeing that have any inroads? Is it permeating at all?
They're just entirely different conversations to the ones that we're having, Laura. People aren't coming at this, so to speak, in such a black and white way at this stage. you've got to remember we're months away from where the referendum actually is. And there are a lot of people that are coming to this for the first time. They haven't necessarily been engaged. There's a bunch of other issues that affect people's day-to-day lives. They don't read the newspapers and follow the daily news cycle in the way that someone like myself does. So we've got to remember that there are a whole bunch of people out there in the Australian community that haven't been properly engaged. And what we want to do is say, look, and that's the theme of the ad, is join us. This is absolutely about welcoming people into the conversation and saying, we want you to be part of this. We want our supporters to jump on board and make more noise. We want those undecided people to, hear about this. And even some of those people that may have some reservations and concerns, we want you to be part of this. This isn't about trying to set sides against each other. It's about having a real conversation in community so that people really understand what this is about. Because when they do, we think that, and my experience is that people are prepared to get behind and support this. They see this as something fair enough and something that our nation can do.
Dean, one final quick question here, and it's something I'm going to ask you and every single person every time. How does this change the lives for people in the Northern Territory? How does this change the lives for Indigenous children living in places like Alice Springs? I mean, we had a school principal on this morning who spoke about a 12-year-old girl stealing the school bus and taking teachers on a wild ride. I asked him what the core of the problem is, and he said colonisation. That is not an answer I was expecting.
Well, you don't have to hear it from me, Laura. You actually, and this is the whole point of why we're talking about a voice and why those voices in those places like the Northern Territory must be heard. You've heard some really strong comments from the Central Land Council, Indigenous business owners and traditional owners in Alice Springs. You've heard from the organisations that work with children and young people, all come out in the last week and say, we've got to be making sure that we're getting behind this successful campaign for a voice, because it is about those people who actually understand their communities better than me, better than anybody else, what the actual solutions are. So we've got to keep listening to those voices and listening to when those people in community are saying, let's get behind this and vote yes, because it is about making sure their voices are at the forefront when we come to the solutions for some of those challenging problems in our communities.
Dean Parkin, pleasure to talk to you as always. See you soon.